What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we go over the magic stories as they're posted on Wizards' website. But this week, there is no magic story. If you are new to JaAR, we have reviewed the Magic Story podcasts in the past, and this is going to be another edition of those types of reviews. This week, we are reviewing the Magic Story podcast regarding Commander 2017 Vampires. As all of them have been, this was hosted by Blake Rasmussen, and it was featuring it's always hosted by Blake. Sorry, that might have been unclear the way I was saying that, but it's always hosted by Blake, and then he has different guests. This time it will be Allison, and for the next multiple podcasts, apparently it will be Allison for this group of them. In the past, it has been different people here and there giving their opinions and having discussions on many different things. But
this time it's not really different things.
Right, and so my quick review at the beginning, and you can stay through to watch this one, I would skip it. Agreed?
Fair.
And we'll give our reasonings why, but usually we say, go read the story or listen to the podcast and then come back here because we don't want to spoil it for you. There's nothing to spoil. It was 23 minutes long or something like that.
Yeah.
And it by the end of it we had gained very, very, very little. So yeah, I would say that this one is skippable, and that would be the quick review. On to the full review, since we are kind of saying that it's not really worth it. If you would like to listen to it yourself, form your own opinions, and then come back here, we're always totally okay with that.
The subject is Vampires Commander. Well, you did say that.
Yeah. So just be aware of that when you go.
If you're interested in those very specific things, then maybe listen to it. But
right.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, and we will review it, and we will give it just as much time as anything else. So on to the full review itself. This was the MTG Story podcast. It was on vampires. It was for Commander 2017, and I'm going to talk about this more at the end. But at the beginning, what Allison said, I think, helped me to understand why this existed or exists. And I think it's because Allison said that past Allison, I like using that joke all the time, past me, future me, whatever. Past Allison promised us, the viewers, the readers, the listeners, whatever you want to call us, that there would be no large gaps of time in between stories. I remember that promise. We discussed that promise that was made. And it was made during the first round of story podcasts because that was what was going to bridge the gap between seasons or sets and stories from those sets. And then she talked about the fact that the Magic Story podcast or the Magic Story group is going through transition right now. Like I said, we'll talk about that more at the end, but I think that kind of set the tone for the rest of it and kind of clued you in as to what these story podcasts are, which is filler.
Yeah.
And let's get into it. So, I'm sorry.
Dare I say it? Poorly prepared filler?
Yeah, seemingly. The commander for the vampire tribe, basically, if you're unaware, Commander 2017, the commander decks are going to be solely based on a tribal mentality or a tribal type of deck. And there are 5 different tribes, and so I think there's 5 different tribes, and there's going to be the different decks. And this week we focused on vampires. They mentioned next week it'll be wizards. There's, I believe, dragons as well is one of them, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. But this was vampires, and the commander for that commander deck is Edgar Markov, which is sweet, right? A lot of people have been asking for more stuff with Edgar, a card with Edgar to begin with. He is Soren's grandfather. he was, and Allison described this a little bit here, and this was kind of one of the first pieces of information that I feel like we actually gained. Was information on Edgar, and the fact that Edgar was the first vampire on Innistrad. He was trying to find a way for himself and Soren, his grandson, to live forever. He followed a dark ritual at the behest of a demon, or recommendation of a demon, and then he told all of his kind of compatriots and friends to do the same, or trusted people to do the same, and then they became the fathers and mothers, patriarchs, matriarchs, whatever you want to call it, of the different vampire houses on Innistrad, which is cool.
Yeah.
And the art that we have seen for Edgar is cool. And I don't know, because based on the art description says that, because Allison read off the art description as well, the art description says that Edgar is supposed to be standing and having servants kind of hooking him into his armor, presenting him with a sword and a goblet of blood. The art that we saw, it's our thumbnail, but it's also just the art that kind of has been shown for Edgar so far, is him sitting. I'm sure that is a way that the artist could have taken some liberties with the art description.
Oh, he was sitting?
I thought so.
When I saw it, I assumed he was standing.
I thought he looked hunched. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. But he
Let
looked...
us know in the comments. Why not?
He looked hunched to me. But if not, maybe that just is the art, and Allison was not aware at the time that she did this podcast or recorded it, that would be something that we would...
allowing her to or allowing us to see the art. That's
correct. That it's something that we will have been able to see and reference back to. And since that's the case, the art description is okay because it shows what we're supposed to be noticing and focusing on.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, another piece of information that we were given. But don't forget, I know that I just said these two things were cool and were pieces of information that we were given. Don't forget, I just did that in 2-3 minutes, and I kind of talked around it as well. This was a 23-minute podcast. So I think that was kind of, they talked about when the picture of Edgar, what kind of point in the timeline that Edgar is supposed to have existed in. But the answer was, we don't know, which is not really information, which kind of leads me to believe that Allison may not have known that question was being asked unless the point was to tell us that no one knew.
Yeah, that could just mean that she doesn't want to spoil information for something.
That, or they just genuinely may not know because they don't know where he is storyline-wise because they haven't
developed his story.
Right, which is fair because I would hope that Wizards is not really in any way, despite how far out sometimes they go in discussing their block or their set releases and their stories, I would hope that they are not in any way discussing a return to Innistrad anytime soon.
Yeah, I would hope not.
Only because it just happened,
and
there's so many other things that they could be doing. So, but yeah, this was... So they discussed that and kind of said, no, nothing. Then they went into vampires in general, which makes sense since that's the topic of the story. They talked about Yahenni, who Allison said that they are a type of vampire on Kaladesh. Right, but that it's a specific type of Aetherborn. Because not all Aetherborn can absorb life force like Yahenni can, and so it's a specific type of Aetherborn on Kaladesh, and it's a vampire in the loosest sense of the word. So yeah, that was Yahenni's name was dropped. They talked about Sengir vampire a little bit. They talked about, or Baron Sengir. They talked about Soren a little bit, who Allison called a wallflower, which I liked that joke.
I did too, actually.
But I felt bad because it's just the two of them, and Blake kind of didn't react at all to her saying that, and I thought that it was really funny, but it was the kind of thing where it was like, oh wow, it came out of nowhere, and
Yeah, he seemed like he did not like that.
Right, and I
He was like, oh, funny.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was clever.
I actually did too, when usually I'm the one who goes, oh, funny.
Because I make puns all the time, and that's the reaction I get frequently. Yeah. And then they discussed, Olivia, and they even discussed Tybalt. There was actually a lot of discussion online today going back and forth about Tybalt in general, because Tybalt was brought up, and everybody hates Tybalt because he's the worst planeswalker and he's terrible. But yeah, Allison discussed Tybalt. Allison said that she has some love for Tybalt, but she brought up Tybalt in the answer to the question of what non-vampire character do you think would make a good vampire? And the answer was Tybalt, because he's extra. I could have done without that discussion. I didn't really think I gained anything from that. Also,
well, yeah, because he's extra. So
I would have
you
to.
Don't need him.
I would have to say, for you, I noticed that there was a vampire, a named vampire that we know about, who was mysteriously left off of this list of vampires that was mentioned, and that vampire was
Drana.
Yeah, I was really surprised. She played a pretty prominent role, even in not just because she was a card and a good card, but she played a pretty prominent role in the Battle for Zendikar story. She was
badass.
Right, but she was in her own individual story, yes, but also because of the fact that she was the general for the vampires on Zendikar that met with Gideon and Kiora and General Tazri. Like, that's a big group of
commander related to me.
Right. And not to say that she should have been the commander over Edgar. I like the choice of Edgar, but to say that she wasn't mentioned at all, and yet Tybalt was, like, I thought that if you were talking about vampires and you didn't bring up Drana at all, I feel like that's a little bit of a snub. My joke to add in here would be that I feel like Ken Troop would have something to say about that, since Ken was the one who wrote the Drana story, where she drank the Eldrazi and experienced all those things, and it was amazing, and if you haven't read it, you should go back and read it, because it was a really good story. In fact,
one of my favorites.
Oh,
I
it's
think,
really
still
good.
To this day.
Really, really good. It was before JaAR, so you won't have us reviewing it. But I highly recommend you go look through the archives. It would probably be fastest to find it if you look at Ken Troop's stories, since he has a smaller number and it's in there. But yeah, I recommend it. In fact, if you're not going to go listen to this podcast, I would go do that instead. I think it's a better use of your time. If you haven't. Or maybe go reread it. But it was very, very good. But that's what I was saying. I think no Drana, but discussion of Tybalt was a little unfortunate. It was something that I was looking forward to hearing a little bit more about. Now, if they had nothing to say about her, I can understand why they didn't. But I don't know. I feel like they shoehorned a lot of the other discussions in. Because, as we're going to get to, I wrote here at the bottom, and this is kind of my closing point, so I don't know if you had anything else to say about it before we get to that part, because there's going to be a lot of discussion here. But
when I sat down for this, I was thinking to myself, well, I hope he's got some notes, because I don't know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, so here's the kind of the bulk of what I wanted to talk about with this, and it's because of the fact that we started off by saying it was bad, skip it, don't watch it, it's not worth it. And so here's what I would say. My question that I wrote down on my notes here, to ask you, to ask myself, and to ask all of you, is, did this need to exist? Did this podcast need to happen? I feel like the only reason that this was here, as I mentioned at the top, the only reason that this was here is because Allison made a promise that there would be no more breaks in the Magic story with just weeks and weeks off of us just sitting there, and then them trying to then pull us back in and remind us that, hey, it's Wednesday again, Ixalan's story starts, please come back and read the stories.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, if we are loyal enough Vorthos and interested in the stories, we're not going to forget.
Right.
Because we'd write it on our calendars or be keeping track enough of the website or Reddit or whatever.
To check.
Yes. But this felt like a please don't go, don't leave, stay around, come back every Wednesday, and we have a review show where we review these types of things, so we will continue to do that.
Right.
Which I am
But
after
then we'll
this
tell
one.
all of you when it's not worth listening to.
Right. And after this one, I will tell you I'm not looking forward to next week's. But we're still going to be back for it. I don't see a need to just scrap it entirely. And I am going to go into next week skeptical, but with an open mind.
Yeah.
To attempt to be as unbiased as possible. Because I want to be able to look at every single one of these podcasts as a new thing, and I'm not, if it's not good, I will reference back to, 2 weeks in a row but if it's good, I want to give it the acknowledgement that it deserves and not say, last week sucked, so this week's is going to suck, and then not let myself kind of see the goodness there. So, but
give it what it's due, and give yourself the opportunity to appreciate it if you can.
Exactly. And hope that it is good. Because that's the other thing. We have said this many times on this channel, and I hope that if you are new, that you don't misunderstand. And I'm almost certain I can speak for Amy and say, we love Allison.
Yes.
We love her work. We love her passion. We love her charisma. We have said in the past, if you look at our past...
Her work ethic.
Correct.
The amount of work that she does.
Yes, and more recently...
above and beyond.
Yes, and more recently we've discussed that with Allison, where she even referenced there were 4 weeks in a row where she did story after story after story after story. It was the Commander story for the Crawl. It was, and then it was, I think, 3, either Hour of Devastation or Amonkhet or both stories in a row. That's a lot of work. And I think she was in the podcast as well. So it was just week after week of seeing Allison, and now she's back again to do these podcasts. And she said it's because the story team is going through a bit of a transition, which is true. If you've been following along with us and or on social media, etc., Mel Lee said that she was leaving Wizards. Michael Yi Chow was also leaving. I don't know offhand what James Wyatt or Doug Beyer or Ari Levitch or Chris Latois are doing right now. Those are other prominent writers who have been writing.
But whatever it is that they're doing, it's not the story.
It has nothing to do with this. And Ken Troop has been around. I think he wrote 2 or 3 in Hour of Devastation / Amonkhet.
2.
Yeah, I think it was 2 as well.
And then
but Michael Yi Chow wrote a couple.
Michael Yi Chow wrote, I think, 2. And then Allison.
Right. And so I can understand that there's a transition. I can understand they are a business. Sometimes people move on. Sometimes people are let go. I don't believe that any of them were let go. I believe that specifically with Mel Lee and Michael Yi Chow, they said they were going to move on and work on other things. And we congratulated them for that and wished them good luck because it's true. But
regardless of the reason, people leave, and then there are positions that need to be filled.
Yes, and so here we are with this group of hardworking individuals who truly are just trying to do their job. And sure, I think at times I can be labeled as a Wizards apologist, coming in here and being like, this podcast was bad, it didn't need to exist, but we love them and they work hard. And it's true. I truly believe that. I think that there wouldn't really be anything wrong with starting, sending out a tweet or whatever and saying, listen, guys, a lot of people have left. We don't have the manpower to write stories for the next 4 weeks. Maybe we give you one Magic Story podcast to tide you over. It's halfway through so that, you have a week off and then the podcast and then a week off and then the first look at Ixalan, which is what they're giving us, and then something else mixed in there before Ixalan actually starts. But this felt very thrown together.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, personally, and again, I want to hear your opinions down below whether you agree or disagree with me, personally, I would have rather had nothing.
Yeah.
Because, one, it doesn't then kind of have us wasting our time. And I don't mean us as in making this show, because that's something that we choose to do and are happy to do. So in no way are we like, come on, you guys are making us sit here. No. What I'm saying is making the readers and now listeners waste their time listening to something because you feel like you owe us, because you promised us something that through nothing that you could control, you couldn't follow up with.
Right.
And I think that this was a noble effort, but this first one didn't really land.
Yeah.
And I think that based on my discussion, I don't think that this is Allison's fault and or problem. I think that Allison has been working so hard that it shouldn't be up to her and or Blake, although, you know, that's a separate issue, but I don't think it should be up to Allison to have to say, well, I promised that there wouldn't be any breaks, so just bring me in, do a podcast with me, and we'll make stuff up. And we'll go from there. You know, come up with questions, and I'll answer them. Because again, listening to this podcast, I can say Allison was still very charismatic. She was still very passionate about what she was speaking about. The problem is there wasn't any substance in the content that she was talking about. And the little tidbits here or there are fine. As an example, I think they talked about snakes for like a minute and a half. That has literally nothing to do with this. It's just that Blake was afraid of it, and so he talked about it. And I can understand that that's witty banter back and forth, but that's not
quality versus quantity.
Right. If this were,
if you want to actually do podcasts where you're talking about the specific different tribes, or called tribes,
yeah, you got it.
Tribes for, you know, Commander, that's fine. Put it in one podcast. Divide it into two podcasts instead of, you know.
No, that's
it's too much, and it's not. It's too much, and it's not enough, because it's too many separate podcasts with no substance to them.
Right.
You know, combine them for the sake of having substance in them, and we'll understand. You know?
And again, speaking of our show, because it's the experience that we have, if you've been following along, you know this, but this has been happening for a while now, where Wizards, the story team, just in general, Wizards is trying to fill the space between their story weeks or set releases. And to fill that space, they are, you know, finishing up the stories, which they did last week, but then trying to keep us around, keep us reading the articles, keep us coming back every Wednesday, which I understand why they would want us to do that, but I don't think this is the way to do it, because I can pretty confidently say that if I wasn't making this show, I probably wouldn't come back and listen to the remaining podcasts. And yet, for this show, I'm, like I said, happy to do it, not a complaint, but as a consumer of the content, I wouldn't waste my time. I could be doing other things, you know.
Right. We have other videos we could be watching, or
making
podcasts we could be listening to, or
exactly.
You know,
and
whatever
so,
it is.
Right. And so, like I said, I felt like it was thrown together. The other thing that I want to say about this particular one, and actually all of the Commander ones, I am not a Commander player. I have always said that. It is not because I dislike Commander. I've never really had the opportunity to get into it. If I did, I'm sure I'd enjoy it, but I don't really play any form of Constructed. It's just easier on my wallet, and I prefer Limited in general. So just to put my bias out there for all of you to be aware of it, I don't play Commander, so I'm not excited for Commander 2017. I think I bought a set of Commander 2014 or 2015, which I still have sealed in my home somewhere. But I don't, it's not something that I'm looking forward to opening and playing a game of Commander with anytime soon, because it's not anything that I have the opportunity to do, and it's not what my play group and my friends do when we play Magic. We draft and do pre-releases and things like that. So I have that bias. And the reason that I mention that is because if you feel like you loved this story because you are so hyped for Commander 2017, and this is not to make fun of you, I genuinely want to know this. If you are really hyped for Commander 2017 and you think that this was like just a taste and now you just you want more, you heard about Edgar and you want to know more about Edgar and you want to see who he's paired up with in his deck, let me know, because maybe that's something that I'm missing. Maybe that's something that, because I'm not a Commander player, that I'm not appreciating this enough, and maybe that's what I'm missing. If that's not the case and you enjoy Commander and also did not like this podcast, please let me know. I'd appreciate that feedback, because I don't have that
context.
Yeah, I can't. Thank you. That's exactly the word. I can't relate, and so hearing that from you guys would help me out a lot. Otherwise, I think we're done.
Yeah.
These are going to be quick ones, kind of whether we like them or not, I feel like. Quicker than usual, I should say. So this was another episode of JaAR. I really, really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to that feedback. If you have any in the comments down below, you guys know, if you've been around for a while, that we love having discussions in the comments. Feel free to check other videos and the discussions that we do have there.
Also, leave your Tybalt vampire fan art in the comments.
Don't do that ever.
No, totally do that. I'd look at that.
That's fair. Or you can tweet it at us, send it to us on Facebook. Those links are down in the description box below. That would probably be easier than... Please don't post links in our comments.
Yeah.
Just in general.
No.
Please feel free to send it to us on Twitter, and if we think it's good, I will more than happily retweet it. And same thing with Facebook. We can post it up on our Facebook page, if that's something that you will allow us to do, giving credit, of course.
Yes.
We're not going to just be like, look at this sweet art that we totally made.
And getting permission.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But yeah, so definitely let us know about those things. Like I said, the links to those are in the description box below. We're going to have videos popping up on the screen, playlists, etc. We've been drafting. Every Saturday we have bonus draft videos up. So we're making 3 videos a week now. Speaking of 3 videos a week, this is one of them. Drafts on Saturday, openings on Monday, product openings. We had a booster box opening. If you missed that booster box opening, you need to go check that out. It's around here somewhere. Click on it.
It's incredible.
Very, very good. Worth your time. I loved it. Up here is going to be our logo. If you click on that or mouse over that or whatever, you will be able to subscribe to our channel, and you will find out when all of our videos come out. Again, 3 a week. So subscribe, stay tuned, you'll find out about all of it. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Yes.
This has been JaAR. I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
For better or worse, we just showed off our...
#Vorthos Pride.
This has been Geek for All, and as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.